Hi, this is Mrs. Talia. Welcome to my virtual learning classroom. And today we're going to have our asynchronous learning modalities, and I will be guiding you through the insides of my learning packet. To guide you further, we will divide our session into 3 parts, and it is as easy as 1, 2, 3, namely gearing up, learning capsule, and assessment. Let's begin with gearing up. In gearing up, we will require our students to download the Google Classroom where learning will transpire. We will have here the presentation of the learning capsule, the distribution of the learning guide. We will have the formative assessment, and we will also collect the feedbacks and follow-ups through exit ticket, or also known as the query sheets. There are also 2 ways to access this learning capsule. They can use the desktop, which the students will no longer need to download an application, but they must have the Google Gmail account. Also, if they choose to access the learning capsule via the mobile phone, they will be needing a quick install of Google Classroom, Quizzes, and Edpuzzle, which are all free from App Store and Play Store, both for iOS and Android devices. We will now proceed to the second part of our learning guide. This Google Classroom dashboard will serve as my learning capsule. This dashboard consists of stream, classwork, people, and the grading system. For the stream, this is where I uploaded my learning guide. Take note that all my students are already enrolled inside my class. To take a look, this would be my senior high school Berean section. They will be asked to join the class using this code. After joining the class code, they will be able to see my posts from my streamlines. My first lesson will be the domain of the rational function. All of the students will be able to see this through their Google Classroom applications once they are hub from the internet connection. Now let us have a quick tour on the domain of the rational function using Prezi applications. Once the student click the lesson 1 guide or the hyperlink, they will be redirected to my presentation. Now I have instructed my students that they can make it large like this one by clicking this icon, or they can just make it as small as this. Now for the purpose of this simulation, I will make it bigger. There. So this learning capsule is to be self-paced, a bite-sized learning. At the same time, it would be interactive. Using their mobile phones or tablet, this interactive solution are all clickables. Also, if they use their desktop, these are also clickable and interactive at the same time. At the beginning of my first slide, they can see the learning objectives of this micro lesson. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to find the domain of a rational function. To the left side, here are the learner's guide. They are expected to watch the video discussion, complete the warm-up exercises, join the practice game, submit their takeouts using Padlet, fill in their exit tickets. We'll click the YouTube link beside.
Alright, in this video I want to talk about satisfying the domain of a function, or equivalently, we're going to find the domain.
This can be enlarged using the full screen keys.
Typically, anytime I see a domain question, there's 2 big things I think I have to avoid. There's 2 big restrictions. If there's any fractions floating around, we have to omit any values of x that give us 0 in the denominator. So we'll have to solve that equation. And if there's any square roots, or really any even-powered root, we don't want any negative numbers to appear underneath that radical after we kind of simplify and do all the arithmetic. So, 2 questions. Let's find the domain of these two. 1 over x squared minus 7x minus 30, and then b, we've got the square root of 2x plus 3. So to me, kind of the idea, the values that are bad, or the values that I must omit for this first equation, I don't want any value of x that makes the denominator 0. So I'm basically thinking, if I set, what makes the denominator, x squared minus 7x minus 30, I'm thinking, what makes that equal 0? Well, we just hopefully factor this. So let's see, I need an x and an x to get my x squared. I need two numbers that multiply to negative 30, so I know I'm going to need a negative and a positive. Those two numbers, when I multiply, I have to get negative 30, but I have to add up to negative 7. So I think if we use negative 10 and positive 3, those two numbers will fit the bill. And again, I want this to equal 0, so if we set x minus 10 equals 0, we'll get x equals 10, and we'll get x equals negative 3 as solutions. So our domain is going to be all values of x. All values of x except for x equals 10 and x equals negative 3. We could write that in interval notation by simply saying it's from negative infinity up to negative 3. Then we have to skip over negative 3 and go up to 10. And then we have to skip over 10 and go all the way to positive infinity. So sort of two different equivalent ways. The other one here, we have the square root of 2x plus 3. So again, to me the values that are good in this case is the way I think about it. It's good if whatever underneath the square root is greater than or equal to 0. That's what we need to happen. We only want numbers that are greater than or equal to 0, whatever's under the square root. Well, 2x plus 3, that's what's underneath the square root. So this now produces an inequality I have to solve. Unfortunately, this is just a linear inequality, so it's not too bad. I can subtract 3 from both sides and get 2x greater than or equal to negative 3, divide by 2, and it says x needs to be greater than or equal to negative 3 halves. So again, this is my domain in this case. And in interval notation, we can write that as brackets, negative 3 halves up to infinity. And that would be the domain for our radical or our square root function.
Once they're done, they can return to their slides and proceed to the next slide. We have the warm-up. Check out the teacher's guide. You will be prompted to log in your Gmail account, Google Classroom account, to proceed to the activity. This is auto-sync in your account, so don't miss it. By hitting this, they will be redirected again to Edpuzzle using their desktop. Now, using their mobile devices, they will be able to redirect to their applications. Inside the Edpuzzle, this is the teacher's content in video form. These stamp points will serve as the things that you will assign or questions that you will assign for the students while learning the video. We have an option of multiple choice, an open-ended question, or a narrative notes. In here, I gave 5 questions. The students won't be able to skip the entire video, so it would be wise to have a short clippings only. Okay, give the domain of the following rational functions. The f of x is equal to 1 over x. What would be the possible value of x? And what is not a good value for x? So allow me to write that. What is the possible value for x? Now, we can change possible to, we can write that as an allowable value for x. If x would be equal to 0, then we will get a 1 over x value, which, let us write it here so we can show 1 over 0. Then we will get, the students then will be prompted to answer a multiple questions. What is the value of 1 over 0? Undefined, 0, or 1. They can skip it, rewatch it, or simply answer. They are reminded that these are graded, so they have to submit an answer at least. And it will be then recognized because this, since this is multiple choice, there is a predictive correct answer for this. Then that's the only time they can hit continue to play the video. An undefined. Once they're done, they will have a prompt notification that the mission was complete, and it will then be recorded to the gradebook of the teacher. Moving back to the slide, they can proceed to the next activity, which is practice using quizzes. If they click the quizzes, will the teacher ever know that the students participated in the activity? Again, this is an asynchronous learning. It is a student pace. They can always go back to the activity. They can pause the activity. They can resume to the activity whenever they are prepared. Now, they can play the quiz, and this will not be recorded to the teacher's gradebook, but this will serve as an activity to the student. Once they're done, they can go back again to their activity and finish the lesson with a more deep lessons by reading it from the Google Drive. This is a cloud sharing, so the students will be able to read more by clicking the icon, and they will be redirected to my drive, my personal drive, Google Drive, to download, print, or have their own copy of the lesson. Now, this is a springboard for the next topic. These are all downloadables and can be shared through cloud sharing. And last slide, This will be their assignment page or their takeout page. Now, the students are allowed to write their solutions or make a picture solution of their lesson. In here, we have what are the allowable values for x in the given function. And this icon of Padlet are clickable. Take note of the direction. Click the icon to upload. Click the icon to upload your written or image format solution. Then, I ask them to reflect on what are the domains of your life and are there any restrictions you are experiencing at the moment. Show them via Padlet. Please attach your name. Because for some reason, if they don't log in Padlet, because this is an open source activity, and they are not required to log in via Padlet, they can just add up their solutions. It would be wise to instruct the students to name their work. And later, we will show you the works of my students who participated in this simulation activity. And also, we have here the exit ticket that serves as the feedback tickets. And if they wish to speak with the teacher further, then they can have this click bubble, which has a link for the email, personal email of the teacher. So they can have an appointment or an instant messaging through this speech bubble. So let us show the functions of these three icons. For Padlet, here are the results of my students' take. And also for the pre-simulation activity that one of my colleague, one of the co-teachers, tested this platform. Now, we will start with this one. This was the first answer. So, the student did not write his answer. He can redo that. You can expect that some students will have this playful answer, and we cannot overrule that fact that some kids are really playful. For some reasons, there are some matured answer like this one. The allowable values of x in the function is in the set where x is an element of R and x is not equal to. After taking this class, I realized that it is comparable to real-life situations, whereas a function can define our lives while the x defines our limits. Since we are in a pandemic, COVID-19 is a restriction for us, since it lessens our ways to communicate and to have proper way to educate. So this is so profound. So I said, you have an insightful thoughts. The teacher would be able to leave a comment, put a heart, emoticon heart if you like, to assure the students that you have read and you've evaluated, you have appreciate the post. From Gab, another student, okay, and then she was able to show her solution and final answer of the domain. You see, you can encourage the students to reflect on their work. Now, this is a formative way of telling them that your lessons are relevant to their daily lives. Now, from Fyra, this is say, due to the pandemic happening now, it's hard for me, especially to my family, to sustain our financial needs. Now, some students will give you a very convicting answer. There are a lot of convictions in their words, and most of them have you can really tell that they're coming from somewhere. Those are the possibilities of this activity, and mathematics is the language of the universal God. These are all simulated. Now let us look. This is the third part of my lesson tour, which is the formative assessment. I hope I was able to show you how I integrated values with the learning activity we had, even if that is an asynchronous. And for the learning tickets, now this is the learning ticket. Once they click that, they will be redirected to my Google form, which is also linked to my Google Drive. They will be prompted to write their email before you leave the class today, because this could serve as their attendance on their activity. Okay, write their name. These are my questions. What's one important thing you learned in class today? Again, this is reflective. Did you feel prepared for today's lesson? Why or why not? What would help make today's lesson more effective? And then they can submit and send a copy for themselves. Now, let us see the responses of the students. These are the responses I have collected from them. These are the emails. I actually have 5 students who participated. So I have 2 UM students, 2 STEM students who participated, and 1 from junior high school. Okay, so they are Zairi, Emmanuel, Fyra, Ivan, and Gabriel. For the first question, they said, what's one important you learned in class today? So they said that finding the domain of the rational function, domain's limit of the function, life is about adapting, inserting a game through a lesson excites me, satisfying domains of a rational function. This is a real-time feedback from the students who took part the activity. Did you feel prepared for today's lesson? Why or why not? Yes, this was discussed in grade 10. I feel that I am well prepared. Yes, I've known the lesson. Yes. Yes, because we are informed ahead of time. So they were oriented already. This is good to know because this will serve as your springboard, your cue to prepare for the next lesson, that there is no need for you to come back. So you can just proceed and move on to the next lesson. Or you can also deepen your lesson by giving them a more in-depth or more challenging questions with regards to the lesson. What would help make today's lesson more effective? So they suggested that more examples and 2 to 3 complicated problems. So you can see the thirst from the students. These are coming from the STEM people. Communication between the learner and the teacher. So for them, they need a follow-up. So there is a suggestion of blended type of asynchronous and synchronous method by having fun and making the lessons less boring. So there's a need for you to give them more activities or make it more exciting for the millennial learners. Perhaps the quiz could be 5 items longer. So they are suggesting that you need to make it more, to give more examples, more quizzes, and these are achievers. So you would really expect that from them. But for those who are low keyed, you will take it gradually. So those are the suggestions that you would want to hear from your students, don't we? Okay, for the final touch, of course, just to show you the speech bubble, this is actually a collaborative work from the DepEd Central, headed by Mr. Mark C., which we were asked to make our Wix site. This was actually my first Wix site. So the contact information will be here. They can just write their name and make their queries here. And also, they can actually write their queries direct from their Google Classroom. They can easily speak to the teacher, converse them, see the comment section below. They can easily ask the teachers without other students knowing their questions. No, it could be made private. It can be done privately. And for the checking, we will now move on to the last part of my learning packets, and that would be how to check the work of your students using Edpuzzle. Remember that the students are already done with their work and you're only checking their activities. Now, since these are collaborated with Edpuzzle and Google Classroom, your grade book on the upper part, this is my activity RF example, rational function. We have the grade book over on the top. I'll just have to select that. This is my dashboard using Edpuzzle. I can see that the students were able to get this because I already pre-checked them. But Zoe and Fyra wasn't checked yet. So let us take a look at that activity because it says to be graded. So the scores are not yet reflected because it's not yet I'm not yet done checking Zoe and Fyra. So let's take with Fyra. If I hit that, I can be able to see the answers of Fyra. So that one is already correct because it's a preloaded answer key. Now, if equate the value of the denominator, if the answer here is correct, then I will just have to hit that check. If not, I can just hit X. So she will not get a perfect score. Write in set notation, I can just hit it check. And also I can comment. No, probably she used the desktop. That's why she has the inequality symbol, the not equal symbol. You can just write good job and comment that, and then it will be sent to her. And then this one is also correct, and finally this is correct. Now once you're done checking, you can just go back to your grade book and see for yourself that it's already there, that Fyra, or it is an on real-time assessment. So the checking is done online by the teacher. Now these grade books can be exported and downloaded via Excel file. So see, so for now I will not save this, but it will be downloaded to my file and I can just export that to my e-class record, and recording would be a breeze for me. So I'm back. So let us have now the students' feedback form that I gathered after the simulation. I get to ask my students after the simulations, and here are their answers. For Evan, sabi niya, "Mami-meet niyo po ba ang class ninyo?" He was very curious. And I said, yes, I have to. That is after checking the list, mastered skills from the learning packet. So I have seen the learning packets that there's no problem with the lesson. So I can proceed to the next activity, which is the deepening of the lesson. And no need for me to go back or to review prerequisite lessons such as factoring, equating to zeros, something like that. The next one is, another feedback is, natuwa ako doon sa quiz is chuchu, sabi niya. Sabi ko, hindi ka natuwa sa voice over ko? Sabi niya, natuwa siya. He said, natuwa po ako kasi short lang. So it's really advisable to have a very short clip. Now, by the way, that clip was made by me as well. And it is a content that I uploaded through Edpuzzle. And then, Gabriel said that, "Ma'am, i-propose mo nga yung method mo sa LM Campus. Hindi siya data consuming. Umabot pa raw siya before mag-expire yung kanyang load." Tapos, ang sabi naman ni Ivan, yung data po na mako-consume is yung paglo-load lang ng video itself. Pero mas tipid pa rin po kaysa sa synchronous classes. For your background, Ivan is already in college and his experiencing both synchronous and asynchronous. But he is also a graduate of Lagro High School. He graduated as a class valedictorian during his time. And the next one, I asked them, which part did you find the most difficult? Because it is not a perfect learning packets. There are some difficulty that we have encountered along the way, and I asked my students, so I gave them choices because they had a hard time answering. A, switching apps. B, loading the activity. C, user interface. D, all of the above. And I said, OMG, wag naman sana ito lahat, because it would be hard for me to think another learning packet strategy. And he said, A and C, ma'am, mabilis naman po mag-load sa akin, kaya no problem. But he said, first time user po, that's his disclaimer. First time user po except sa Google Classroom. Pero noong pangalawang beses, okay naman na po. So he tried it again and he found out that it was as easier as before. The first time he tried the application. Next, I asked them to answer, as a STEM or UM student, my ideal online learning, there was a typo, learning would be blank. I can learn best with my own pacing, teacher guided, with edu apps or education application form. And here's what Bausa said. As a STEM student, my ideal online learning would be async learning with little interaction, somewhat similar inside a class pero medyo idealistic. I can learn best with my own pacing and teacher guided. It was quite contradicting because he said he wants asynchronous learning, but at the same time, he can learn his own style. He can use his own style. He learns best with his own pacing, but it has to be teacher guided. So what he was trying to tell us is that he wants a blended type of online learning, which is synchronous and asynchronous. So far, that's what I get with what he's trying to say. And for Gabriel, she said, as a UM student, my ideal online learning would be a blend of sync and asynchronous learning. I can learn best with my own pacing, but learning will be more effective if there will be a teacher who would guide me. For Fyra, as a UM student, my ideal online learning would be having some interaction between the student and teachers during discussion to avoid misconceptions about the topic. I can learn best with my own pacing together with teachers' guidance. Again, so those are the words of the students I have met. And finally, a last word from Evan. I think the question was, overall, would you think, considering a limited data connection and limited learning management system, do you think that this would bridge the gap of learning difficulty? And he said that I think it couldn't entirely fill the gap brought by the pandemic. However, small steps taken would be better than completely refusing to take actions at all regarding data connection and bandwidth concerns. I think it would be best to follow the asynchronous setup of learning teaching, as the students will opt to learn the lessons when they are willing and able to do so. This is on top of the consideration given that not everyone has access to a fast and stable internet connections. And there you have it, my dear colleagues, teachers, and mentors. That so far is what I gathered from my students, and I hope this would bring a new venue for you to consider an asynchronous learning modalities. Thank you and have a nice day.